The School Safety Patrol of the St. Paul Public Schools is now 50 years old and certainly one of the old institutions in this area. This will be the topic of our program this evening on Your Schools Today. Welcome once again. Lieutenant Henry Winterhalter is the director of the St. Paul School Police Patrol, and he's with us this evening along with Officer Tony Zangs and Mr. Fred Clark, who is a veteran principal at Garfield and Longfellow schools, and he's had very much association with the police patrol. Mr. Winterhalter, I'd like to ask you just very briefly, what are your duties as director of this program?
Well, I've been put in charge as supervisor of the school patrol in both the public and parochial schools of our city. My particular job involves the training of the boys and girls and coordinating with the teachers and principals of our school, surveying the dangerous school crossing that need protection by the patrol boys and girls.
Mm-hmm. How long have you been in this position, Henry?
I've been in this position 20 years, since 1950.
You were a regular patrolman then before that?
I was a sergeant when I was appointed by the late Charles Tierney to help my previous supervisor, Mr. Frank Hetznecker.
Mm-hmm. Tony Zangs, I know you've been kind of the right arm in this department, the right arm of Lieutenant Winterhalter. What has been one of the big problems, would you say, in working with the school patrol?
Well, the problems the training program is the biggest problem we have. It takes so long to get across to all these children what we want into training them and how to get the children across the street with the least amount of troubles. And this is where the problem comes in, is to get good training and so forth. And we do this. We go from school to school and train all these children for this purpose.
Mr. Clark, as a man who has seen an awful lot of school patrol activity in your days, what would you say this does for the youngster who is involved?
Well, first of all, I think we have to do a great deal in the selection of the type of child you want onto the street. And it gives a lot of responsibility they have a lot of responsibility, so you better select your best. In all kinds of weather, whether it's snow or sleet or rain, they have to be on the job. And so you better select the best that you have.
Mm-hmm. So you're talking about responsibility, I'm sure. And,
responsibility and leadership. Ability to get others to follow is a very fine quality in our young people. They can have all the other qualities, but if the others won't go along with them, if they get too domineering or something of that type, the other children just won't follow, and then you are very successful in having a very good police force.
Mm-hmm. I think a good way to get into the activities of a school police patrol would be to view an historic old film that we have in our possession, which was given to the St. Paul schools in 1944 by the then superintendent F.J. Hetznecker. This film was made in 1921 of the school police patrol, the first year. And of course it's an old silent film and it is in black and white. Lieutenant Winterhalter, and you may want to make some comments about this.
Yes, Mr. Skelly, this picture was taken by the Ray Bell Films at that time, one of the oldest film companies in the city. In fact, they're still in business. Here's the old school crossing sign that we used to use at various intersections. Here we have pictured a school scene of how the children would act if there were not school police to supervise them. This picture was taken on Thomas Avenue. Now, this was originated as the school police program 1920. And it was here are some of the police officials and the superintendent of the public schools, as well as the superintendent of the parochial schools. Here we have one of our former chiefs of police. This is simulating here by the Ray Bell people of a school crossing miniature board here, to which we use to demonstrate to the different schools how this program should operate.
The parochial schools really originated this program.
Actually, the first patrol was originated at the Cathedral School on the corner of Kellogg and Summit, February 17th, 1921. In fact, last February 17th, we just completed 50 years of school patrol in St. Paul and also in the state of Minnesota, as well as the whole United States. St. Paul was the first city in the world to utilize boys and girls to supervise their fellow students coming and going to school each school day.
Those stop signs you saw there, they used those type signs back years ago, you know, where the officer was out in the street and turned them
Turned the
back
sign,
and forth.
mhm.
Yeah. And then, of course, the children there, they were simulating traffic.
It's a picture of the old Franklin School located down near the St. Paul Market, was torn down for the redevelopment of the freeway. Now, many schools select their school police by election. Some are chosen by their principal and teachers. Some require an examination. Here we have a picture of, notice the dress of the children in those days compared to today. The bobbed hair on the girls and the short knickers on the boys and the long black stockings. Here they are electing their captain of their school patrol. Notice the teacher standing by. Now they're tabulating the votes to see who becomes the school police and also the captain, lieutenant, and sergeant. Each patrol has a captain, lieutenant, and sergeant in each school. Now here the teacher is pinning the badges on the lucky boys and girls who were elected by their fellow students to serve as patrol people. Years ago, there was only one patrol boy or girl allowed for each 100 students of a school. So consequently, your chances of becoming a school police boy or girl were quite slim.
One out of 100, huh?
1 out of 100. Here's Sergeant Frank Hetznecker, of course, was the one that promoted this patrol. Here we see pictured Superintendent Hetznecker. As I knew him as a boy, I also was a patrol boy myself in 1930 and worked under him, never thinking that I'd be a police officer or later on actually take up the duties when he retired.
This is election the chief, or is this
It's the chief's election.
chief's
down.
election? It's going to be our new chief in that time, in 1921?
21.
Now, each year in November, we invite the captains, lieutenants, and sergeants of each school to report to the St. Paul Auditorium where we have an election.
There's the fashion of the day.
And here we have the well-dressed police boy of 1921.
We didn't have any Sam Brown belts at that time, evidently.
Sam Brown Bell came into effect in 1924.
Yeah. They just wore the badge and they kind of tore the clothes a little bit, didn't they?
Yeah. So,
Mr. Headsnicker told me how he went about getting pieces of harness and putting them together to make some of the first belts. That there used to be a harness maker down near the depot who used to donate his time and money for free to put these belts together.
Here are the newly elected chiefs, and they were taken down in the public safety building or the police department and congratulated by the chief of police. We still continue with this program, and a little later on you're going to meet the two present school police chiefs for 1970 and 71 who are with us this morning or this evening.
Those boys are older, and at that time we had 8th grades in schools. You notice how big these boys are. Now they're...
Now here's a mother sending her children out to school in the morning knowing that they'll be met by school police boys at the corner, so her worries of these child being struck by cars as they go to school are alleviated. So the parents of the children of our city kind of take the school patrol for granted.
Here they're lining them up before they're crossing the intersection. They're getting in a line, then they get out there and they hold that paddle type sign, if you notice, and
Notice
stop the traffic.
Here's an old streetcar which many of the boys and girls today have never seen. This is on Dale and LaFond. We started out with 1,275 school police, and now we have reached the number of 3,600 boys and girls who serve approximately 100 schools at 700 different intersections throughout our city. Noticing the pointer there showing the many schools that we have. Now when the schools are dismissed, they're marched in an orderly manner up to the corner. This happens to be the Cathedral Elementary School, and this is the corner up at Summit and Kellogg is where the school police began.
That was the first crossing on February 17th, 1921. And look at the cars here. They really date back
Some Model Ts,
Model Ts.
And the traffic isn't quite so heavy
little less
as it is
traffic.
today.
I believe if it was winter time, you'd see horse and wagon sleighs going down there yet. You'd still find some of them because these cars were put up in the winter months. They didn't run these in the winter time. They didn't have nothing to keep them from freezing.
The church looks the same, of course. The cathedral's been there since many, many, many years. There's the old
Stop sign.
stop sign, metal sign that the boys and girls used to carry. Many of you parents watching this program tonight who have been former police boys or girls will remember that sign. There's another crossing up on Summit and Grotto, the old Irving Elementary School, which has since been torn down and abandoned. Here we have some of the old cars coming again.
It looks like an Essex there, doesn't it?
Well, you can advertise the Essex, Tony, because they don't make them anymore.
That's right.
General Motors won't mind, I guess. The convoy system, of course, was used. Of course, since then we've sometimes have changed it to smaller groups, but notice the side curtains on the old cars.
Of course, whether you use a convoy system or the other system depends upon the part of the city in which you're located and the danger involved in the
Does your
crossings.
school use this court procedure to discipline anybody?
No, we haven't used that procedure for some time, but it...
Here they have a regular court procedure here, apparently years ago. This is the old Lincoln School, which is being abandoned this year after many, many years. This is up on Collins Street, adjacent to the Lincoln School. Here a police boy is observing a couple of boys who are hooking a ride on looks like a water truck. He's going to write his report in, and then this will be brought up to the court. Guilt. And the guilty ones are, of course, reprimanded. They are judged by their own kind. Find that this worked out pretty well. There's the captain of the school police passing penance on the boy or girl, whoever it might be. And they're being pointed out the danger of their ways. And they probably promise not to do it anymore. They'll probably be let off with a light sentence. Incidentally, through all our 50 years, we've never had a child killed while under the supervision of the school patrol.
It's always when they're late, coming late. If parents would just realize it's the
Well,
late
they've been
child that runs the possibility of danger.
Right.
Those that are on time and the police boys are there, no problem.
Now, in the spring of the year, we have a picnic, which is the grand day of all. And this year, our picnic is scheduled for Como Park on May 18th. And incidentally, this picnic is sponsored through the efforts of the St. Paul Jaycees. Now, the St. Paul Jaycees have sponsored the school police for many, many years, since 1928. And we're really indebted to the St. Paul Jaycees for the many hours they spend soliciting money to provide the equipment and also the money to provide the food for the patrol boys' picnic. So the Jaycees are to be congratulated for their many years of service to the patrol.
It's quite a sight to see feed some 5,000 children in less than an hour and a half. Wieners, buns, ice cream, milk, what have you, and they really do a wonderful job out there.
Now, we find that the school police actually look up to police officers in this day and age when everybody's being called pigs and so forth. We police officers, the school police boys and girls are actually looked upon as junior members of the St. Paul Police Department. We find that very few of them, in fact, last year we had not one patrol boy or girl who was actually picked up for any juvenile act of delinquency. So we're proud of all our school police boys and girls.
Well, I think that certainly was a fascinating film, some 50 years old. Fred, I think you mentioned the students were older than now. You were dealing with 8th grade at that time?
At that time, we had grades 1 through 8
Through 8.
and that's why these police boys, where you notice they were as tall as the men who were pitting on the badges.
Mr. Hetznecker mentioned years ago to me when he said sometimes they even had a shave because some of them were 17 and still in the 8th grade. How do you think about that, Mr.?
Well, we've kind of got beyond that in our
I guess they used to fail them those days.
philosophy of
They'd
teaching,
hold
too.
them back a little bit, huh?
What about the record of the school patrol? And you mentioned this briefly. You said that no student has ever been injured while under the supervision of the school patrol. Is that right?
That's
We've
right.
we've had a few injuries. I'll correct that. We have no deaths.
No one killed,
Yeah,
you
no
said.
one
That's
killed.
right. You said no one had been killed.
And the big possibility is those that he forgot his book or something, and he has to chase back for that book, or
Misses the patrol lines.
They miss the lines. Then there is that possibility, that late comer. They're the ones that really take the risk, and mothers should have that in mind. That boy that comes at about 10 minutes late to school runs a big chance of being hit rather than the one that's on time.
Lieutenant Winterhalter, you have a training program, I know, for the students, and you do have a systematic procedure in orienting them to the program. Now, maybe you'd like to make some comments on that, along with some of the visuals that
I'd
we
like
have.
to mention at this time also that each school has a teacher in charge. Oh, here we have a film here showing on the screen right now of the Sister Carmela, who is actually was the originator of the first school police group at the Cathedral School in 1921. Now, here she was pictured about 4 or 5 years ago, shortly before she passed away at the age of 91 or 2. Now, here we have pictured with her, of course, the captain of the school police at Nativity and also the captain of school police at Groveland Park School. We also have a state law that requires certain things that we must, the police boys must live up to. Here we have our stop patrol flag, which of course is red in color. Each boy and girl is required to sign this pledge card, as well as having the parents give their purpose. Here we have a belt record card that each boy and girl is responsible for the equipment he uses and must take care of it, not to lose it.
These records are kept in our files, so we know each and every child that has a belt and star in the city of St. Paul.
We try to select our children this season of the year, so we have a ready-made police force for next fall from our 5th grade, so that when our 6th grade moves out, we have a group to move right in.
Now, this is an eye examination, also the hearing test by the nurse at one of the schools. It's to make sure they can see, hear, and here she's okaying the card where the boy can see physically and fit to take the signs. And
Stand out in 30 below zero weather.
And we did mention the fact a little while ago that we do occasionally run across children with colorblind.
Yeah, here's the caring way that we take these slides from school to school and we talk to the boys and girls. Here's the position of attention that we'd like to have the patrol boys keep when they're on the corners so that the motorists. Here we have a parked car that might interfere with the vision of the patrol boy. He must walk out just beyond the car to hit it, to be able to be seen by the motorists. I might also mention that through our 50 years of existence, we estimate there's over 100,000 former patrol boys and girls throughout our city, and we estimate 1 out of every 3 drivers that passes any of our patrol corners, the cars are driven by a former patrol boy. So we receive great cooperation from the citizens of St. Paul and Minneapolis, of course, because we are the originators of the patrol, and former patrol boys admire the present-day patrol people.
this was a ceremony on how to hold the flags the right way, the wrong way, and so forth we just went through. And, of course, we have line leaders that lead these children across the street, and they hold them back at the time they're getting up the flags. We want to be sure the traffic has come to a stop or is stopping when they tell them to go ahead and walk.
Of course, the cars are much faster these days, and they do try this getaway, and I think we have an increasing number of violations of the last year or two because of this, unfortunately, and we hope that we continue our good record in not having any child killed.
Here's the captain out checking the corners. Each captain and lieutenant sergeant required to keep a record on their patrol people. Here's what the motorists would see, a flag to the left, a flag to the right. His position of attention, waiting for children. A line crossing. Each school we have an assembly where we ask the boys and girls to stand in front of their fellow students to receive the pledge of the school police. Now we go up to Legionville. Each year there's approximately 194 boys and 120 girls that are eligible to attend Legionville Camp, which is a camp to train patrol boys and girls in the state of Minnesota.
Our PTE usually sends 4, that is, at least the officers. Every year we put enough money in the budget to send at least 4. Sometimes we get scholarships to send some from people in the neighborhood, but we still...
This camp is located
send
up
4.
near Brainerd, Minnesota.
Well, and I suppose the camp is one of the sought-after objectives then in the police patrol. This is their reward.
No, it's not
No,
a
it's
reward
not a
camp.
reward.
It's actually a training camp, Mr. Skelly. It's boys and girls who are in the 5th grade going into the 6th to act as leaders next year. So consequently, they can return to their schools and perhaps help the teacher in charge train the boys a little bit better and supervise a little bit better for being up at this camp. We go up to the camp ourselves, and we have classes up there for 5 days. And then these boys return to their respective schools in September with a greater knowledge of what their duty should be.
I haven't found one youngster who, coming back in the fall, didn't give the camp a very high rating. They might go up there a little timidly, but when they come back, they feel that they've really had a real good week, not only of fun, but of training. So it must be a very fine training program they have up there.
As Mr. Clark stated before, you know, our children are being trained at this time of the year. They will be trained by the 6th graders. They're starting to train the 5th graders for next year already. So we
Regular
get kind of-
apprenticeship program, right?
try to get a head start on this.
And the day of the picnic, I believe the patrol, the 5th graders will take over and have a little experience for
That's
the last
right.
2 weeks of school.
What about the patrolmen, the patrol students themselves? Have any of them been intimidated or injured in the line of duty in the years that you've been associated with?
They've been brusqued by cars a time or two, but not seriously injured that I know of. They watch themselves pretty well. I think the big thing is in the wintertime when you can't have, you don't want fair weather police patrolmen. You get out there and there's a blizzard or there's snow and there's ice, and these youngsters get right out there. I'm not so sure that I'd like to stand out there, but there they stand, and so I think the picnic is a good thing.
I can think of one occasion, Mr. Skelly, as far as the patrolmen being intimidated. As you know, the patrol boys and girls, if they're holding their flag properly and a car passes by their upraised flag, the motorist who does this act is liable for arrest. So the patrol boy and girls have patrol forms that they fill out and they mail them into our department. Then we in turn apprehend the driver. Well, this particular driver was apparently guilty, as I remember. This was about 10, 15 years ago. And he was issued a tag. Now, we issue several tags a year for this violation. It's a serious violation. However, this particular driver felt that he was being intimidated, so he went back the next day after he was sentenced by the judge to $25, and he kind of bothered the police boy, tried to berate him a little bit, and the police boy reported to his principal, and we arrested the driver again, and he was sent to the workhouse for 30 days.
We have with us also this evening 2 student patrol leaders, and I'd like to introduce them to you. Keith Espelin to my right, and Keith is a patrolman at Longfellow School, Longfellow Elementary School, and next to Keith is Jeff Domler, and Jeff hails from Nativity School in St. Paul. I'd like to just ask you boys briefly, why did you get involved in the school patrol? Keith, I'll ask you that first.
Well, I feel that school patrol, you almost have to get involved because you feel it's your duty to protect people from your school.
You had a feeling that you wanted to help your school and the students there by getting involved
Yes.
as a patrol leader. Jeff, how about you?
Well, at school I've had a lot of responsibility, and I've had active in sports and whatever in school. I usually like to get involved.
What would you say is your most difficult problem in being a patrol leader?
Taking the guff from the other kids.
Taking the guff from the other kids? How about you, Keith?
Yeah, that's about the same thing. We get a lot of horseplay.
What kind of horseplay do you get?
Well, in the summer and spring, most of the time it's just playing ball in lines. And So we either take the ball away and give it to Miss Murray until school is out, or else we just tell them not to do it. But in the winter, it's throwing snowballs.
That's a big job to cut down the snowball throwing then.
Yeah.
What differences do you boys see now? You viewed the old films that we saw 50 years ago before your time. Did you notice any particular differences in comparison to your program today?
Well, not really. The only difference is well, we have flags now and they had signs then. It's basically the same program.
How about you, Keith?
Well, sometimes they may have had less patrols than we do now. They may have had one on a corner or two, where we have 3 or 4.
It looked like a little less traffic then, didn't it?
Yeah.
We saw some old cars. We didn't see very many horses. As Mr. Clark mentioned, it perhaps was the summertime, and at least in those pictures, and they weren't out. And the traffic looked, of course, a little bit less congested than it does today. We also have some pictures of, to update our films a little bit, we have some pictures of the 1970 parade, which were taken right in the parade area, the Capitol area. And these were, of course, students from throughout the city.
Of course, a particular school in which I'm supervisor, whether it's Baker or Tilden or whether it's Garfield or Riverview, and that is the only group I really see. I don't know why that is, but that's really the only group that I see, and they always seem
Watch
to do a very
Mr. Clark.
good job.
Mr. Clark gets picked up in these pictures once in a while. He's out there supervising pretty well.
Well, I'm a parade man. I always like a good parade.
Well, I think it's. I think the people involved, certainly Lieutenant Winterhalter and Mr. Zangs, do a fine job in organizing this parade. I've been there 2 years now, and it's just a fantastic job of organization.
It's an opportunity for the citizens of St. Paul to see who their boys are. And
I don't know how well you sleep the night before that parade.
Well, at one time we did, you'll notice the uniforms there. We agreed upon having white T-shirts and denims. But, you know, the morning of the parade, they come out with, there's always 1 or 2 that come out with a black,
Sure.
or somebody comes out with a khaki,
Sure.
or a pair of denims has been washed 5 or 6 times. So the teacher's really on the spot when it comes to uniforms.
I didn't mention, and I'm sorry I didn't mention, that Keith and Jeff are both chiefs in the patrol program, so we want to mention that. And I want to thank you boys for being with us this evening. Lieutenant Winterhalter, Officer Zangs, Mr. Fred Clark. I hope that we have given you some further insight into the activities of the police patrol in St. Paul. Thanks for watching. Good evening and welcome once again to another edition of Your Schools Today. This evening we're going to deal with the Fluid Block program at Marshall Junior High School. Last month we did a two-program series, a two-part program on the flexible scheduling program at Highland. This evening we'll be at Marshall. Mr. Clarence Johnson is a principal at Marshall Junior High School, and Vern Kenyon is the assistant principal. Welcome both of you this evening. Mr. Johnson, could you very briefly explain to us what we mean by Fluid Block?
Well, the Fluid Block is a program that we use classes back to back, and we are able to move them within the range of each grade so that the teachers have fluid areas between their classes. If they want to change because of the offerings that are being particularly given, they can do that, and between the levels that the students understand. And depending upon the particular subject of the time, the teachers will change their classes back and forth without having to be in a particular schedule.
So we're really talking about modular flexible scheduling,
Right.
and the Fluid Block is another aspect of that kind of program.
Well, the time, actually the flexible scheduling is just the time element, where the Fluid Block are the classes being able to move between themselves in their own sequence.
Mr. Kenyon, you have some charts this evening I know that you were going to use to explain the program to the audience a little more graphically.
Yes, our program was the outcome of many teachers' workshops and in-service training sessions in which our teachers wanted a more flexible time schedule. Rather than have traditional 6 one-hour classes per day, they felt that some classes would be better used if they might meet for 24 minutes or for even a longer period of time than the traditional hour. I would like to show you in our 7th grade how we've mapped this program out. Our day is basically divided into thirds. The first section, the first 5 mods, and then a 6 mod section through the middle of the day, 6 mods because lunch is included, and then a last 5 mod section. To go back and look at the first 5 mods, these 7th graders would be in music and art, and then move into industrial arts and home ec for the first 5 mods. Now, the team working with the students for these mods can decide ahead of time how much time they want for their class. If the music teacher felt they wanted to have the students for the full 5 mods, this can be arranged with the industrial arts and home ec and art teacher. We'll see over on this side of the chart the other half of our 7th grade student body. When our students here are in music and art, there will be another section in industrial arts and home ec. Following down a typical day, a student may be 2 mods in music, go on, if it's a boy, to 3 mods in industrial arts. At this time, at the end of the first 5 mods, all of our students would be moving to their next classes. Our core is English and social studies. In the 7th grade, this is the language arts and American history. The teachers responsible for the core section may get together and use large group techniques. They may break into smaller groups and use tutors to work with some students in some aspects of the program. Also, our foreign language, French, comes out of this time, as well as our reading program. Moving on for the rest of the day, these students would then go into math. Here again, it may be for 2 mods or 3 mods, and then to science and Phi Ed. Our science and Phi Ed segment rotates on a daily basis. They may be in science on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday basis, and Phi Ed on Tuesday and Thursday. The other half of the program would be followed the same way, but a different sequence of time allotments. Also, we will be going over the 9th grade program here just briefly. It has a few more electives than what the 7th grade has. We can take a look here at, again, the same basic format of a third of the day spent in either core or typing and math. The middle third of the day for the 9th grade involves their elective subjects, industrial arts, home ec, basic business, art, band, chorus. Sharing this middle third of the day is the science physical education sequence. Going down this side then for the 9th grade, they would be in English and social studies for the first 5 mods, be in their elective and science physical education for the next middle 5 mods, and then into typing and math. We feel that this program gives the teachers a chance to use team teaching techniques, working together and planning to use the time as they see fit, using the time as they need it for that particular day. And Jerry, I think this is where our fluid block idea comes in, that they can change on a daily basis as the teacher desires.
I think a good way to understand the program would be to look at some film that was shot at your school during the past several days, and I think this would give us some more insight into the fluid block.
This is the industrial arts part of it, and you can see that the young men here are doing their soldering, and in the soldering part of it, they probably would be setting up some work for, those are tool chests, I think, that they're making right there, and they have to get all the corners and everything so that they will fit inside the large cabinet they will eventually make.
We noticed the safety precautions that are used in the shop aprons and the goggles that are required for the safety angle. Here they're working on a favorite project. It's a charcoal starter. They wrap a little newspaper up and put in the bottom and put the charcoal in the top, and the charcoal is burning in a few minutes.
Pretty timely this time of the year.
It's a popular project. This is the wood shop area.
They're working on the various pieces of wood to learn how to make insets for flooring and things like that. And as they come along, they have to get them all measured out to the right dimension so that they will fit side by side as they put them together. After they've placed them all together, they glue them, and they have a sequence that they have a block, multicolored block platform that they...
All of our 7th and 8th graders take shop. They spend 1 semester in metal shop and 1 semester in wood shop. In the 9th grade, wood shop, as well as the counterpart, home economics, is an elective course.
Now, under your flexible scheduling in the fluid block, the students would be able to spend enough time to complete projects. This has always been one of the problems in traditional scheduling, that you never had enough time to do a complete job.
Right, they usually have 3 mods so they can get not only the pattern laid out, but the thing completed before they have to go on, and they get 1 sequence completely finished before they have to. Usually by the time they'd have the pattern laid out, they'd have to pick it all up and put it back together again. Now they can get the sequence completed because of the 72 minutes of time. Here's home ec.
Students generally plan the menu one day and get the materials for it, and then the following day do the preparing or the cooking or whatever may be required. This is in the cooking part of it.
You see, it's typically what the things that they will eventually have to do at home. They have to learn the various use of the various, excuse me, tools that they have in the kitchen, and in the preparation, they write out the various recipes that are handed to them, and they follow them. And of course, the thing is, the proof of what they do is in the eating. And then, of course, the inevitable, when you get finished, you have to clean up what you created.
How about the equipment at Marshall?
We
This
have
home economics class, for example, looks fairly well equipped.
very well equipped. We have not only the cooking area, but we also have a family room, and which are on both sides of a partition. We have regular replacement of all our equipment, the dishwasher and the refrigerators and the stoves. They are every year they're in a regular sequence of replacement, so the things are all new. And then, of course, we also have the sewing room, which you'll see, I think, in this a little later on, but they all the equipment is periodically replaced.
Leads to a larger question, which would be how suitable do you feel the building is for a fluid block program?
Well, of course, we are cramped for space. This is one of the things that we are in the process of making some changes with right now. And the thing is, you never learn all of these things until after you've gone into the program to know just exactly what are some of the things that you need. One of the things that we are using right now is the study carrels that have been just placed in here now. We found out that we can use our small group areas, and these are things that we have been in the process of getting to. We are going to have some room dividers where we can have more small group areas, because we find out that this is something that is very well accepted, and with our program, with the tutorial work that we have, and for the IDS time that we have, these are the areas that we need, and this is the things that are coming up. Here's our French class right now, and this is class is also an elective. Now, this is one elective that 7th, 8th, and 9th graders can all take. It's ungraded, and you go in, you are taking the class for 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, depending on the length of time that you are there, and you will get credit for 3 years if you spend 3 years in French. And if you go on to another school, you also get credit for the time you've taken this here. And when we keep that within a 1 mod block of time, and we found out that it's been very receptive because of that. The class is well, because it's an elective, it's well received, and our students are quite enthusiastic about it. This happens to be a young man who was a practice teacher and happens to have studied in France. And so we were very fortunate to have him there, because he has a real Parisian accent, which each French teacher has a little different approach to.
Reinforces the learning, perhaps.
Right, right. And he has made a number of tapes for us that we are going to be able to keep and use in the future.
Students are working on paper mache, making masks here in the art rooms. I guess one of the measures of a good art room is to see a lot of activity going on, and don't be concerned about the mess that appears to be made. The students love to get their hands on the different materials that they're working with. Some are working in clay, some in wood, and others with paper mache in this sequence.
We've had 2 art shows already. One of them was at the Awareness House at 982 Laurel. One was at St. Clement's Church, and then we have the third one coming up next week at the Unity Church. So there will be 3 art shows that our students will have put on, and they run for a week. I think this next one is, because of the participation that we have in it, will run for 2 weeks at the Unity Church right across the street from school, and the public is invited.
Our students have found out that their artwork is in demand, and some of them have sold different paintings or drawings or other art objects that they have made. And this has really boosted their morale and created a much higher interest in art.
I suppose making a real incentive for those who might be thinking about art.
Right.
To get involved.
This is a group, I think, that is working on our yearbook. We will have a yearbook, and I think it comes out, it's due out, I think, the 8th or 9th of May, we expect it from the printers. And this group has worked many long hours, and
Isn't a yearbook rather unusual for a junior high school?
yes, but this is something that we thought that for pride in their school, and it created a very good interest, and we have some teachers who were very interested in putting one out, and the students were quite enthusiastic about working on it. And never having this experience has been very, very good for them. And we have a daily or a weekly paper. Well, it's not exactly weekly. It comes out about every 2 weeks. And there's one of our photographers taking a picture. And
The spokesman, I believe.
spokesman,
That's
right
the
there it
title
is,
of your
right there.
paper.
And this is a group that meets once a week, preparing the paper, and it comes out about the average of every 2 weeks, depending on the headlines and the stories that are going at the current time.
Typing is a subject that all ninth graders take. If you recall the sequence on the board for ninth grade, the ninth grade programming, all ninth graders receive typing for a full year. This was the outgrowth of a questionnaire that we put out to students last year, asking them what areas they would like to see expanded or what areas they were interested in. And ninth graders all felt that typing was very worthwhile.
And you can see that this is a group, this young lady here was using it in the work on the paper, preparing the stories that have to be sent to the printer. And
Would you say this is a sort of a typical picture of in-between mods here, or?
right, see, we only, as Mr. Kenyon mentioned before, we only turned the building completely over twice during the day at 10:36 and again at 1 o'clock. So the odd times when the mods change,
The halls aren't bulging.
the halls aren't bulging. And we do not have any bells, and so there isn't a matter of ringing the bell and everybody moving. This is the talking typewriter now. We are one of 3 schools that have talking typewriters, and the other one is Roosevelt Junior High and Maxwell Elementary School. And this is a computer type reading sequence, and the keys are all colored. And on the screen, a picture is flashed, and the tape that is run with this tells you the student what to do, and then they will flash the picture with one of the words left out, and they have to spell it on the typewriter. And then they will have to pronounce the word, and then the word that they pronounce after it's been pronounced for them, and they pronounce it back to the machine, it'll give it the same thing back to them. And if they make a mistake, it'll say, no, try it again. And if they make it the 3rd time, then they'll tell you the color key that they're supposed to print. After they finish that, then they go to an aide, and they reinforce the learning lesson that they had in the talking typewriters. And this happens to be Mrs. Boyd right here, one of our aides that has been with us 2 years now and helping the students in the reading program. And Mr. Jarvis, who is a supervisor in the talking typewriter room, and he has 3 aides up there, and we average around 40 students a day through the program. And then it's also open at night for adults, and we are averaging 15 to 16 an evening up there 4 nights a week that are learning to read. So we're operating at really about 13 and a half hours a day. This is another aide. They're running a Bell and Howell, and they are listening to the tape. The story is written on the card, and that brown line running through the middle there is the tape, and the student is listening to that and reinforcing the learning sequence that he had.
This looks like a math class.
Right, I think this is Miss Gerber. And it is Miss Gerber having her math class.
It's a ninth grade general math class.
So you're really able to get at more subject areas then with this fluid block program than you would in traditional.
Right. Not only more subject area, but we can run many more things because of the various parts and segments that can be brought in and out of a particular block of time, rather than where you had the traditional 55-minute, or if you are wired in as you do on a regular flexible scheduling where you can't change from day to day. We can change from day to day as we go along. And this is the fluid part of it, because we are not, when you go into the computer with the regular flexible modular scheduling, you have the same sequence on Monday, Tuesday, and you can't change that sequence, where we have can make the changes as we go along. Now this is our reading teacher, Mr. Williams, and he has both remedial and accelerated reading programs. And the machine he has, that as you see down here in the corner, is the controlled reader, where they set for speed reading. And they flash this on the screen, and they keep picking up the amount of words that the students learn how to read.
We have with us also this evening 3 teachers from Marshall High School who I'm sure will have some comments about their feelings toward the fluid block program. I'd like to introduce Roxanne Butler. To my left, Roxanne is chairman of the core department. Mary Gerber is chairman of the math department, and Constance McKean is chairman of the science department. The question, which all 3 of you can react to if you would, is what advantages does fluid block have, do you feel, in your area of teaching? Start with you, Roxanne.
Yes, I think in core, which Mr. Kenyon has indicated covers language arts and American history in 7th grade, or some other social studies area in the 8th and 9th grade, obviously covers quite a bit of subject matter. And with the flexible scheduling, we are able to break up with more facility, taking small groups of students for either tutorial help or a special project in a different area of the school, or break up according to special interest or needs for reading ability. We feel this provides a break for the children. They can move more frequently than they would in a traditional program, as well as helping us teachers use our skills to better advantage. In other words, instead of one of us having to pretend to have an excellence in all areas, we can concentrate somewhat and get a better program to meet specific needs.
Mary?
I think the greatest advantage that the fluid block has been in our area has been in that all math students are approximately, for example, in the 7th grade, we have all math students meeting at approximately the same time. And between 3 or 4 teachers, we've been able to shift students around quite freely as their abilities warranted that. Say we had a student that started out in a general math class and was really excelling. We could push him into a regular class with a little, possibly some tutorial help. And I think that's probably been the greatest advantage in our area.
We're
very free to move.
We talk about flexibility for the student, but I'm sure this is a flexibility for the teacher as well.
Both, but I think it's probably the greatest advantage is to the student.
Mrs. McKean?
Well, what I like the most is that with 3 mods of time, or even 4, we can get a lot of the science projects that we have going done. And we also can shift the children around. If we want a large group, we can have that. If we want them in smaller groups, we can have that. And we're not locked into definite times when we have to have these things.
Assuming that the teacher can be more imaginative and creative under the fluid block program, are any of you dealing with particularly unique programs, different types of programs at this time?
Well, in science, we're starting a new type of textbook. It really isn't a textbook. The children get about 3 pages a day of the book, and this works very well into the scheduling because I can have more time for those laboratories that do take more time. And so it's worked just very well.
In our math program, we've done a tremendous amount of assembling materials, more in hopes for, I think, a very exciting maybe pilot program for next year. Our greatest boost was in, I think it was the end of February, we got a computer terminal. And we were able to hook up with the Honeywell EdNet division and run off a whole individualized series, math series, which will test a student at any level and place him according to his ability level. And we're also planning a computer programming course for accelerated students that will also tie into the textbook material they're doing at the time. Say they finished a chapter of material, they would then, for enrichment, go to the computer and write a program whereby the computer would solve what they have just learned.
At the 7th grade level, we have started an enrichment program for those students who show skills, high skills in language arts and social studies, and we are able to schedule them so they are both a member of their own core class and yet can join in a special group activity. And at the other, on the other side, we are able to take children who have missed school for some reason, give them individual help so they too can keep up with their normal core section, and this is an advantage at both ends.
I see. Mr. Johnson, you talked about student orientation. I know before. Was this? Would you have any special problems in student orientation to this program?
Well, our teachers spent a considerable amount of time prior to the students arriving and planning out what they thought would be necessary, because with the changing of the schedule and the changing of bell without any bells, so we had figured that this was a necessity to go step by step with the students so they could understand what was going to take place. And in doing so, we gave every student a folder similar to this with their name and a name tag, as you can see up in the upper corner here, their complete program that was computerized, the orientation booklet, a pencil, and also the paper. So when they came to school, they were ready. Now we brought the classes in one at a time, 7th grade, and they ran the whole sequence of their program for the one day without any other interference. The 8th grade on a separate day, and the 9th grade on a separate day. And the things that we needed to recover with teacher-wise and student-wise, we were able to pick that up each day. And then we brought everyone in on Friday and got the program off, I think, to a very good start. And I think everybody was very pleased that we could move right out on Friday without any difficulty, because everybody understood what they were supposed to do.
In about 30 seconds, would you like to react to something like, where do we go from here at Marshall?
Well, as the teachers indicated to you, the steps that we're thinking right now of what is the next steps that, because we've gotten it off of the ground of the pilot program now, what are the next steps to be taken in consideration? And I think what Ms. Gerber has mentioned, the math program, we hope to do bigger and better things next year, and also the pilot program that Mrs. McKean has been running. In science, hopefully we'll have a lab for next year for this to go on with. And I know that the core people are planning many more things for the English Language Arts program, because they have been doing, we've spent 3 Saturday workshops already, and the thing is, where are we when we get right now, what are we going to do for next year? And this is what we've been doing.
Well, thank you, Mr. Johnson. This is about all the time we have this evening. We hope you've enjoyed the program, and thanks for watching.